Welcome to episode 65 of the Gambots podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and this is my co-host.
It's Christian.
On this week's episode, Christian and I are going to be talking about the movie Mr. Right. Christian saw the movie In the Tall Grass, and I recently finished the first season of True Detective. But first, Christian, we both watched Mr. Right, which is directed by Paco Cabezas, and it stars Anna Kendrick and Sam Rockwell and Tim Roth. And we have wildly differing views on this movie. Do you want to give the audience who has not seen this the basic premise of this movie?
Sure. So, Anna Kendrick plays a, down on her luck, I don't want to say manic pixie dream girl, but, it's in that kind of zone, who just got cheated on by her boyfriend, and she meets Sam Rockwell, who plays a semi-retired hitman, and they kind of fall in love, and Anna Kendrick has to deal with his job and his kind of happy-go-lucky attitude about murder.
Yes.
And then it's just a rom-com.
Yeah, it's a weird mashup of rom-com / assassin redemption story, but also he still just kills people.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So reading through your notes, I think the biggest area where we differ is I could not stand Anna Kendrick in this. Did you like her?
It's not my favorite Anna Kendrick role, for sure. I thought she was a bit much at times. I was definitely more in on Sam Rockwell in this.
I will say I did not dislike him. I thought he played I thought he played the assassin role well, and the whole time I was like, he doesn't seem normal, and then eventually they just go, oh, he has brain damage, and it's like, yeah, it fits. He seems like he has brain damage.
Yeah, so the crux of this, the whole conceit of this movie is that he is painfully honest from the jump, but he says everything he says with this kind of smile and goofy attitude. And so when he says things like, oh yeah, I had to go out in the parking lot and kill a guy, and she's just like, oh, haha, yeah, okay. But then that's actually what happened. He went out into the parking lot and he killed a guy.
Yeah, he did. That's why I don't dislike his character as much, because he's consistent throughout. Anna Kendrick's character changes for essentially whatever the plot dictates her needing to be, with no explanation. So either Anna Kendrick is crazy from the get-go, or this is bad writing.
Yeah, I mean, she becomes very okay with murder at the drop of a hat. But I think the real issue for me in this lies in that they're both superheroes, and it's just never addressed by the movie.
You picked this movie, Christian. I was like, okay, it's a action-y rom-com, and the first scene that Sam Rockwell appears, he takes out 4, I thought they were SWAT officers at the time, but they're just a group of assassins. 4 assassins while wearing a clown nose for some reason, never explained.
Nope.
This movie has a problem where the characters are quirky just to be quirky, and his clown nose is one of those things. But he takes all 4 of them out, and I was just sitting there thinking, this makes no sense. These guys aren't even shooting in his direction. The final guy he throws a knife at has 2 fully automatic machine guns in his hand, just firing into the air, nowhere where the character's standing.
Nope. Yeah, so everyone in this movie is really dumb. Really dumb.
Yeah.
And they're self-aware about it, because at one point one of the bad guys is like, I really respect the way that you are going all in on this really bad idea. And I was like, wait, what?
Well, the plot dictates it. They can't go back now.
Yeah. But yeah, like they're both Anna Kendrick and Sam Rockwell's characters are both superheroes. Like they go through this whole thing where he's like, "Oh yeah, I can feel the flow of the universe, so I know where people are going to be before they're there, and I can tell you know how to do it too." And she's like, "Sure." And then they throw knives at each other like it's a game, and then they just move on. And at no point is anyone like, "Wait, you can see through the Matrix."
Christian, this is their second date. He doesn't even like throw the knife like past her head. It literally is going for her throat and she catches it. Like,
yeah. Yeah, they have Daredevil level awareness.
It's ridiculous. He's just like, yeah, it's like a dance. You can sense it.
Although I have to say, like you were talking about that opening scene where those assassins going after him, I have to say I was in on Tim Roth like right from the jump.
Oh, I really like Tim Roth, and we touched on him a little bit in The Incredible Hulk, which is the last thing I saw him in.
Same.
I liked him in the show Lie to Me, so it's great to see him essentially play the same type of bad guy from The Incredible Hulk, except he doesn't turn into a Hulk.
Yeah. No, like right in that opening scene where they're like, all right, we're going to go get Sam Rockwell. Are you coming? He's like, oh no, somebody has to return to the van after he kills all of you.
Side note, who is the guy who plays James Bond?
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig. Do you think Daniel Craig heard Tim Roth's Alabama accent and was like, I'm going full Kentucky for
Daniel
for Knives
Craig
Out?
based his entire Knives Out performance on this
Yes.
little-known movie.
So if anyone's wondering what Tim Roth is doing in 2015, it is this movie.
I can't believe this movie came out 5 years ago. I don't know where it's been. Like, I couldn't believe that I had not already watched this.
I cannot wait till we get into its box office versus budget. I can't believe you didn't see it. No one saw this movie.
Yeah, I guess. Like, I don't know where it went. Like, usually when something like this happens, I'm at least aware that it's like passed through theaters and did poorly, but I had never even heard of this movie before like a month ago.
Yeah.
I would have bet money, like before I did any real research, when it popped up on my Netflix dash, I'd have bet money that this was a Netflix original that came out like 8 months ago.
Oh, it was ahead of its time. This should have been a straight to DVD movie.
Oh, Lord.
So my biggest problem with this movie, as I mentioned, is it just feels like whenever the writers need something to happen, it would just happen. So for example, Anna Kendrick is completely emotionally distressed. I get it. Her boyfriend cheated on her. So her roommate's solution to this is to take her to her job at like a veterinary clinic or a pet daycare or something, which makes no sense. Who takes their emotionally distressed friend with them to work?
Yeah, like come ruin my professional life too.
Right, and that it was entirely done so she could then run into Sam Rockwell in a convenience store, whose introduction was they're not even in like the birth control aisle. There's just a stack of condoms sitting that he knocks over and then catches all and uses some line about using them with her. And he does not come off as charming at all. He seems like a complete creep and he just follows her.
Sure does.
And then she's just like, yeah, okay, let's go get a drink.
He does like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man catching like all the food on the tray where he's just like, bam, 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 got all the condoms.
How many takes do you think that they had for that?
Oh man, I don't even want to know.
But that's the thing is like Anna Kendrick's character this whole time knows it's insane that she's doing what she's doing because I feel like the writers are trying to give you like a nudge like, yeah, we know this is crazy. She would be like, I'd be an idiot to go on a date with you. Then 4 minutes later, they're like, yep, we went on a date. It was awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's like the smash cut in the pet store where she's like, I'm going to take this crazy cat out of the cage. And they're like, no, don't do that. And then it just cuts to them outside all covered with scratches.
Yeah. Which is why I just can't stand Anna Kendrick's character in this. Everything she does, like a quirky person would do this. And it's just like, no, that's not how a normal person or even a weird quirky person would act.
Well, I mean, even the friend has to sit her down and be like, you are terrible. Like, you keep smashing through these, like, warning signs. Like, you need to get better at recognizing red flags. And Anna Kendrick's like, I think I'm in love with that guy. Is that crazy? And the friend's like, yes.
And that's what I think. That's why I think it's bad writing, because no reason should that be like her exact words. Like, they fall in love so quickly just to move the plot along.
Yep.
Sorry.
Like, I will say right now, this is not a good movie. But I really enjoyed it. Like,
Yeah.
if this becomes a cult hit, which I doubt it will, but like if it did, I'm in the cult on the ground floor. Like, I'm ready.
Yeah. Boy,
And
all
how
my notes on this, Christian, are everything that doesn't make sense. We talked about the knife throwing earlier. On a first date, someone throwing a knife at you and being pumped literally tried to murder you, and you're okay with it.
Yep. But how great was the relationship between Sam Rockwell and that other guy, Steve?
Oh, Steve was the redeeming part of this movie, like in Tim Roth to half an extent. But Steve was the only sane person in this movie.
Yep. Steve was great. Where he's going to storm the headquarters at the end, he sees Steve's outside and they're like sharing Skittles, and he's like checking his gun over and like, well, good luck. Hope I don't see you in there.
Right. Steve is the only one who knows how to take him down because his entire like premise is like, oh, I can dance around stuff, and Steve's like, I'll shoot you with a shotgun. you can't dance around the spread. And then it's like, oh, buckshot.
He shoots the shotgun, but then Sam Rockwell catches all the buckshot.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
yeah. It was birdshot, to be fair.
Like, it still injures him, but he definitely like caught it all with his hand.
Yeah. What did you think about the villains in this? Because there was a weirdly convoluted double villain scheme going on.
There was so much. So Sam Rockwell's whole shtick is that he is a retired hitman, but he's still like advertising, and so anyone who tries to kill him, he kills them, or anyone who tries to hire him to kill somebody, he kills the person that hires him because they're a bad person and murder is wrong. And so the bad guys in this try to trick him into thinking that somebody is hiring him so that he'll kill who they want him to.
He'll basically kill their boss.
Yeah.
And then they can be the new boss.
Hiring a hitman to kill their boss.
Yeah.
They're going through this they're trying to do this like double blind nightmare situation, and everybody's in this movie so dumb.
Yes. And then Tim Roth is hunting him on top of this. But the final scene is because they like stole his girlfriend, Anna Kendrick, and then the actual guy trying to get killed is just like, wait a minute, just send her away. I don't want her here. Even Steve's like, this makes no sense, and everyone's like, we're just going with it.
Yeah, but then Anna Kendrick is once again very okay with murder. All of a sudden, she's all right with murder for him. She's all right with murder for her.
I will get to that. I want to like lead up to their weird storyline of her being like a normal person to then just becoming a psychopath. So once she sees him murder someone, she freaks out, and you're like, okay, this is a normal reaction. The FBI comes and talks to her. They're watching her house, and she's like kind of worried she's like, is he going to come and get me? I don't know. So then the next day,
she freaks out a little bit. Like, she makes him take her home. If I was sitting in the passenger seat of a car and the person driving walked onto a bridge, shot some dude, left him there, and then just got back in the car and was like, what's for dinner? I would be so much more freaked out than just, can you please take me home now?
Oh, yeah. I could see her being in shock, but also, if you're in that situation, I don't know how you play it, because if you get on the car and run, do they shoot at you too? Like, do you try and play it off like you're cool until you're, set time?
I guess, like, at least when he wasn't in the car, I would have been, like, panicking, but she just kind of stares out the window like, what's going on?
Did he just shoot someone? So, she's, like, under FBI protection. She doesn't know at this time that Tim Roth is a bad guy. And then he comes back with a knocked out Tim Roth, like, busts into her apartment, and she's just like, you killed someone, you kill people, get out of here. And her roommate's like, get out of here, you're a murderer. Literally within a minute, she's like, you know what? I think I can forgive you. We can be back together. There was like no apologies. There was no like soul searching. It just happened.
Well, and that's the scene where he's like, she's like, I can't believe you're a hitman, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I told you I was a hitman. I never lied to you about any of this. And she's like, oh, I guess that's true.
She's like, you're honest. And then they just start making out.
Yeah. None of this makes sense.
No, and so let's look at her progression from being theoretically a normal person in a normal relationship to finding out that who she was dating was a murderer to I guess being okay with it in a matter of minutes to 4 hours later she's captured by the bad guys and has to fight one of them. What does she do?
Oh yeah, she goes full murder house, and it's great.
Oh yeah, with like a statue or something. They
Yeah,
justify it because the guy killed turtles, but
she beats his head in with with like a bust. It's crazy.
it and so like that one's like sort of like justified. It's like okay, it's me or him. The last guy who like she uses magic powers and dodges a bullet. She like gleefully murders this guy and walks out with Sam Rockwell and is like, just killed two guys, high five. And
Oh yeah.
literally 3 hours before, she's like, Sam Rockwell character, whose name I can't remember, you cannot kill anyone. Dude, just like celebrating murder.
But then like he is fine with that too. She's like, please don't kill anyone again, and he's like, you got it. And so he
Yeah.
just shoots all these people like in the legs and lets them get away.
He doesn't kill anyone in the final scene.
Nope.
Tim
But, like,
Steve does.
She definitely like willfully hunts that other guy down.
Yeah, like she could have maimed that guy. Like she turned into the bad guy. She was actually the true villain of this movie.
Oh my god.
She has like no emotions at all. She is a psychopath.
Well, getting cheated on changes a person.
It really does.
Yeah, this movie was wild.
Yeah, like
genuinely
we had
think-
mentioned earlier, there's like this side character he runs into who's like a hired goon that actually gets shot off on him and gets the jump on Sam Rockwell's character twice. He is the only good person in this.
Yeah, I really thought they were all three of them were gonna be together at the end.
Yeah, I honestly, like, while watching it, I was like, man, I wish this was a Sam Rockwell and Steve movie instead of a Sam Rockwell and Anna Kendrick movie. Like, them as buddy, like, I don't know, like, partners or something, I think that could have worked.
I genuinely think Sam Rockwell might be my favorite actor right now.
Off of this movie.
No, like, I've seen him in a handful of things. He's, honestly, I think the only good part of Iron Man 2, he was just in Richard Jewell, which I watched, which was...
That's right.
It was fine. I wrote a written review, so go check it out on our website. But he was easily the best part of that movie. He's just always fun to watch on screen.
But actually, one of my favorite parts of this movie was when he was fighting the, like, second in command of the bad guy and he starts doing karate. And he's like, I can't do karate. We can't do that. I thought that part was actually
He kicks him
great.
in the head. He's like, that was karate.
Parts of this movie were funny. I think the overall plot, though, just didn't. It was so out there, and Anna Kendrick bugged me that I couldn't get into it.
Yeah, I would agree with you that I think she was the biggest weak point, which is crazy for me to say because I typically love her. But yeah, they wrote her very, like, strangely. She was
especially
she was
after
more a
Noelle.
plot
Like, I
device than
really
a
liked her
character.
in Noelle.
Yeah. Yeah, she was more of a plot device than a character in this, I think.
Yes. Let's talk about the budget on this. Did you see the budget for box office?
Yeah, it's pretty catastrophic.
It is bad.
It's not like Cats level bad, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's worse. I guess I don't know the ratio, but the budget of this was $8 million. They made $400,000 in the box office. They made not even 1/16 of their budget back.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
So that's what I was saying. I'm not surprised you never heard of this movie because it clearly did not do well. So critic-wise, do you know how this did on Rotten Tomatoes?
Not super well. Pretty middle of the road. Critics have it at 44%. Audience has it at 55%. I don't know. I would probably put it higher than that.
See, this is a one where I disagree. This is one of the worst movies I've watched this year. I think they are way too high on this. Like, all of the kind of bad movies we watched that we thought were boring, I think they were generally at least trying. Like, this movie at times did not seem like they were trying.
Yeah, definitely certain parts of it could have been fleshed out a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, the whole time I was watching this, because when I the couple days before I watched this, I was listening to How Did This Get Made, and they did an episode. I think it was called Prelude to a Kiss or whatever, and I didn't watch Prelude to a Kiss, but them talking about like weird 90s movies with plot points that don't make sense because it got adapted from a play.
Mm-hmm.
And when people actually talk about the play and it's like, oh, it's an allegory for the AIDS epidemic, it sounds interesting, but when it, I guess, got translated to a movie, it just sounds bad. I was like thinking this is something they're going to talk about in 20 years if that podcast still exists, and just be like, this rating's horrible, like nothing makes sense. Like this, to me, this was an equivalent of like a really bad 90s movie.
Yeah, it had that kind of vibe.
So would you recommend our audience check this out?
Yes. I have literally already recommended it to 3 separate people.
Let me know what they say, because I might be the odd one out on this movie.
Yeah, I'm excited to start getting some wider opinions.
Yeah. For anyone wondering, I would not recommend this movie. So, Christian, you recently watched the Netflix original In the Tall Grass. Now, this looks like it's based off of a Stephen King novel. Did you like this?
No, I did not.
So I've not actually heard of this. I might have seen some previews for it because I've been on Netflix a little bit more lately, but what is the premise of this?
So it came out late last year, I believe, late 2019. It is about a field of grass that's about 7 feet high, and the field is alive, or the field is at least sentient, and controlled by a magic rock in the middle of it, and the field can move the people inside of it around in time and space.
Interesting. I mean, it's a different premise. How does it fail on the execution?
So this movie's confusing as hell. Like, since it can move people around in space, that's what you're introduced to first. So like the people wander into this field, they're lured into the field, and then they get split up, and then they can never find their way back to each other or to the road. And so anytime they jump up to try and see where they are, they're in a different place, and it's a little creepy. But then it starts involving that it can move people around in time as well. Because like people enter the field, and then there's like a 3-month jump, and then they like jump back 3 months to where they started, but the people who entered the field 3 months later are still with them, and then people who enter the field later are the ones who are luring the original people in the past, and it is just a mess.
Is there any actors of note in this?
Not really. Patrick Wilson is in it. He's probably the only actor that's really anybody's ever really heard of. There's a couple people who look familiar, but I looked up their IMDb's and I've never seen them in anything, so just one of those faces, I guess. I mean, the thesis of this movie is essentially inside the field there's all these branching paths, and you don't choose one of them. You choose every one of them every time you come to one of them. And so the story tries to show you where people end up with all those different conflicting realities, and it just doesn't work.
Well, I think that's a problem a lot of time travel stuff has, because it's hard to demonstrate that. And I think the closest thing someone has actually done to show the complexities of time travel rules is the Rick and Morty episode where they change like the past, and they have like a box pop up every time they do it, so it's like 32 different screens with 32 different things happening on it.
Yeah.
Did you see that episode?
I have, yeah. I like that. But it's
and I was listening to an interview of them, and they're like, we will never do an episode like that again because it's just insane to animate because you're essentially animating 36 different screens.
Yeah. So I'm sympathetic to that. I always have an issue when outside of a show like Doctor Who, which is literally built around time travel, like anytime a show gets involved in time travel, it's ultimately just going to create a continuity nightmare. Like the later X-Men movies try, and it's just a mess. But this is so much worse because it's not like, oh, we're going to jump back in time and change the past. It's like we're changing the past concurrent with the future and the present all happening at once. And so, like, people will die. Like, Patrick Wilson straight up murders several people in this movie. He goes a little crazy and starts worshiping the magic rock in the middle of the field. And then like 10 minutes later they'll like run out of the field and bump into somebody, and it's like, no, we just watched you die. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? That didn't happen. And so there's different versions of these people running around through the field in different points, and it's just so convoluted. And at the end, you're not really left knowing what happened. You're just left confused and not satisfied.
Is there any, like, because it sounds like there's a bunch of different storylines. Is there any storyline that's particularly egregiously bad?
Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty bad ones. Like, there's a little kid who's running around trying to, like, trick people, and then I think he eats his dog at one point. Becky, who is, I think, supposed to be the heroine, goes into the field 6 months pregnant, but then there's a 3 month time jump, so the baby is born in the field. And then insane Patrick Wilson helps deliver it, even though he's like wearing the face of her boyfriend, I think, or maybe she's just hallucinating. This is when I say things like this, it's not because I don't remember; it's because I genuinely didn't understand what was happening. But
Gotcha.
at any rate, the baby is born, and then Becky falls semi unconscious, and Patrick Wilson kills the baby and feeds it to her.
Ugh.
But then when she wakes up, she's like, I had my baby. And they're like, really? Where is it? And she's like, And then they just kind of move on. So I'm genuinely not sure if that's something that happened, or if it was a dream, or if it was a hallucination, or if it was an alternate reality that she kind of has memories from. And so it's so bad. Like, at no point did I have any concept of what was going on.
Yeah, I think that's what's hard with Stephen King. And granted, I didn't watch this, so this is me talking without any actual knowledge on this movie. But I think his movie, like maybe his written work tends to work well, but he makes so much that I don't think all of his writings are the best. But I also think they tend to not translate very well into movies sometimes.
That definitely seems to be the case, because everything I read in like preparation for this episode, people really seem to like the novella. And it is just, I think, a short story, but people seem to think it was decent. It got decent reviews, but this movie certainly did not. And it felt a lot like a different Stephen King miniseries I had watched about a environment that is sentient and moves people around inside of it, and that was Rose Red. But at least that one had ghosts. I really liked Rose Red. It was like a 3-part miniseries. Like a decade or so ago. And I would just have rather watched that. The rock in the middle of the field is never explained at all.
Oh.
Patrick Wilson takes people to it, and he's like, if you touch the rock, you'll understand. And I guess it just means like you'll go crazy like him. But at no point do they make any effort to be like, what is this rock with these carvings on it, and why is it magic? It's just...
Not going to lie, man. That's how they would get me to touch the rock. They'd be like, I'm not going to tell you anything. You have to touch the rock to find out, and curiosity would get the better of me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he kind of undercut that argument because he started doing that immediately after he squished his wife's head with his bare hands. Also, I guess the rock gave him super strength. Again, not clear.
How has this fared with critics?
Badly. It's got a 37% from critics, 38% from audience on Rotten Tomatoes. That's very generous.
Would you recommend our audience check this out?
Absolutely not. If you're on Netflix and you're browsing around for something to watch Mr. Right.
All right, and finally, I watched the first season of True Detective after years of literally everyone I know telling me to watch this TV show because it's good. I finally watched it, and I gotta say they're right. Season 1 of True Detective, really good.
Time is a flat circle.
Yeah, I didn't even mind the weird like mystic elements they put in because it worked out well for the murderer. Like I think it all made a lot of sense, and it kind of brought it back around. So for those who don't know, this stars Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. And a few weeks ago, we watched The Gentleman, and I was like, I don't care for Matthew McConaughey usually. I got to take back my words. He was amazing in this.
Yeah, now I watched the first season not right when it came out, but not long after. So it's been several years. I'm trying to remember.
Right. I think this came out in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been out a while. The basic premise of this is it starts off with two FBI investigators speaking with two former FBI investigators about a murder that happened in 1995, and it is now the 2010s, 2015, maybe somewhere around there, and they're investigating another murder. So you get a story within a story where it's McConaughey and Harrelson talking about how they investigated this murder that was seemed to be cult related in 1995. And really, I'd say 75% of the movie is that story and all the stuff surrounding it, and then how it ties into the most recent murder. And then the last two episodes kind of tie everything together, I think, almost perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of misconceived. What is it called? Misconceived God, I can't think of words right now, Christian. I had a lot of misconceived conceptions about what this show would actually be about, and I thought Harrelson was going to be like the star and like the good guy, but really his character was somewhat reprehensible for a cop.
Yeah, I mean that was a lot of what they tried to dive into, and this is just kind of like, if I'm remembering correctly, everybody just kind of was awful.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is his whole thing was like he wanted to be a good person, but then he's not the best dad. He's not the best husband. He cheats on his wife a couple times. So I feel like they're trying to like, show like ask the question, can you still be a good person even though you do bad things to people who really you shouldn't? But then you're out there also catching cult killers who are killing tens of children.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say the storyline on this, and I don't want to say too much for people who haven't watched it, because I think a lot of the strength is not knowing what's going to happen. Is I was riveted. I watched all 8 episodes in 2.5 sittings. I think I watched like 4 hours on Thursday, 2 hours on Friday, and 2 hours on Saturday. And I would have watched the full, like, finish it off on Friday, but my wife wanted to go to bed. So do you remember like the murdery part of this? Like, do you remember who the bad guy was?
I do, and I think that was one of the reasons I was less happy with this.
Okay, so you didn't like how they tied who the bad guy was overall into it?
No, because, I mean, I like a show that lets you come along for the ride and, like, lets you maybe get ahead of it a little bit, and this really kind of didn't.
See, I felt a little bit differently. I don't think you could have picked out the exact murderer, but you could kind of pick up on the conspiracy going throughout. I thought they gave you a little bit enough to like be like, oh yeah, this was weird, where they had left a couple loose ends open. But I'm with you. They did not. You could not pick the murder out right away.
No.
But I did like how they tied the two timelines together. And I in the final episode I thought was great, where you do finally know who the murderer is, and it's so tense of him going through that weird Caracosa area, hunting him down, and then because the whole time you find out early on that McConaughey has like a brain damage from him being undercover narcotics agent, so he sees hallucinations and stuff. So you're actually like trying to be in his shoes, like, is what he's seeing real or not? He's like kind of questioning it while going through this hellish nightmare crypt area. So I don't know. I thought the last part was awesome.
Yeah, it was very tense.
So I know I'm obviously high on this. Rotten Tomatoes critics have this 87s, and the audience has it at 97. I am closer to the audience. I really like this. It's rare for me to binge watch a show, and I pushed this out in 3 days, so I highly suggest it.
Yeah, I would recommend it too. From what I remember, I was unsatisfied with the ending, but the ride was still pretty fun.
Yep, it's on HBO for anyone who wants to check it out. Alright guys, and now it's time for our Amazon review game. Just a quick recap of the rules. Christian has a 5-star review for a movie on Amazon. He will read me the review, and then I will have 2 yes or no questions to help me narrow it down. I can then either guess or ask for another review, get 2 more yes or no questions, ask for a third review, get 2 more questions, then I have to guess. And we're keeping score this year. If we get it on the first review, 3 points, second review, 2 points, third review, 1 point. Christian, I am ready when you are.
I must confess, I am really struggling on my approach to reviewing this film. It's a monument to so many grand and large-scale subjects. I'm having a hard time writing because I'm still processing and digesting what I saw. I couldn't sleep last night. The images and lines of dialogue circling my brain were tormenting me. It's a different story for this director, no stranger to history and building his narrative. It's still so unique. We all know it's roughly based on a story that's familiar to most of us, but it's presented in a way that I feel like only he could have shown us. It takes its time, and I mean really takes its time.
Is this a religious... Does this movie have, like, religious connotations?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Okay. I was thinking Passion of the Christ. Mel Gibson just has a way with words. Oh, boy. Was this movie released after 2010?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to need another review.
Okay. He's done it again with a highly entertaining movie. It's a complete ode to the 60s film and television, jammed full of nostalgia. The movie looks great, both colored and shot to evoke the era. Costumes and settings is strongly nostalgic. Yet again, shows a true mastery of film with inspired editing, music, and camera work. The closest the director has gotten to a pure comedy with some strongly crafted bits of dialogue. Emphasis on more intense action-oriented sequences with Leo. It's fun to see him returning to a more let's have fun with this tone than he had in previous ones.
Is this directed by Quentin Tarantino?
Yes, it is.
Is this Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Nice.
Oh boy. For a second I was like, is it the good guys, the new guys, the one we were talking about that's also from the same period?
What a great movie.
Yeah. We'll put that in to week 4. Okay. Man, I was kind of curious. I was like, I don't know if you just picked some movie out of the blue and it just was, I was hoping it was Passion of the Christ.
That would have been wild.
Because if you said yes, my next question would have been, was there a South Park parody episode?
Oh my god.
All right, thanks for checking in, guys. Before we head out, Christian, what are you going to be watching this week?
Well, this week and probably the next several weeks are going to be tricky. My job is closed for the next 15 days due to the governor shutting all non-essential businesses down because we live in crazy times. So I'm going to be cruising around Netflix for a while. I want to start the show I Am Not Okay With This. It's like a coming-of-age kind of TV show about a high schooler, but she gets psychic powers, it looks like. I'm also going to try and start the TV show Ragnarok, which is on Netflix. Otherwise, I'm just going to be doing housework probably, trying to stay healthy.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to be watching. I picked up the video game Divinity Original Sin 2, and I probably put like 10 hours into it last week, if not a little bit more. Actually, really fun game. It's originally a computer RPG. They ported to PlayStation 4. It's like, for me to platinum this game, I'm going to have to play it twice, and it's going to be like an 80-hour platinum. So I don't know if I'm going to get it because you have to play on the hardest difficulty called For Honor with a special caveat that if you have a total party wipe, like it just deletes your save.
Oh, wow.
Which, yeah, so once I beat the game, I'm going to have to like gauge if I want to actually continue or not because I'm just getting done with the first act and I think there's 4 acts and I am like 16 hours into it. Wow. So it's like and I think I'm on the shortest act. Like it's a very big game.
Yeah, that's intense.
So we'll see. It's by the guys who are actually doing the remake, not the remake. They're doing the Baldur's Gate 3 continuing that franchise, Larian Studios, and it is honestly the closest I've gotten to video game D&D, just with like the breadth of conversation options you have, like depending on what stats you put stuff into, like things can play out completely differently, because I'm also co-oping it with a friend of mine because our D&D group kind of fell through. So I have two separate things going on with that, playing two separate characters, and then the battling in it is so great. It's turn-based, so it's good for a co-oping, but also instead of having like you have 30 movement, then you have an action and a bonus action, stuff like D&D, you have just 5 like action points, and you can move 30 feet with one action point, or so it kind of divvies it up that way, but you can only do so many things, and there's cooldowns, and it doesn't sound one-to-one to D&D, but when you actually play it out, it gets very close to it.
Nice. I'm actually writing a D&D campaign right now. That's also what I'm going to be doing this week.
Nice. I've seen a lot of your Snapchats of it. It looks cool. You put a lot of effort into that map, didn't you?
Yeah. It was probably too much.
Just in time for them to ban social gatherings.
Yeah, really. It's fine. I got
otherwise, I think we're going to try and watch a couple viral movies. We'll figure that out and put it online, and just get some more reviews online. We have about 10 reviews in the backlog right now that just require us to make banners. So I'm going to try and get motivated here to do that. Otherwise, that's about it. All right, guys, thanks for checking out our episode. If you'd like to contact us, we are at Gambots Network on Twitter, or you can email us at gambots.blog@gmail.com. If you have a suggestion for our Amazon review game, let us know, and we'll probably end up picking it. Otherwise, if you're listening to somewhere where you can rate or subscribe, we'd appreciate it, as that would help us get the word out. And finally, we now have our website up and running, where we have basically 200 word reviews of almost everything we've talked about on the show for the past 2 months, and then also stuff that we don't get a chance to talk about. We've been putting reviews up online for those as well, so we'd appreciate it if you checked it out. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you.